The message came through just as I was pouring my second cup of coffee, a short ping from Isolda, one of our partner liaisons in New York. She was rarely direct, always overly polite, but her text was unusually brief. "You changed roles, didn't see your name anymore." I froze, cup midair, the smell of burnt roast filling the kitchen. Changed roles. That made no sense. I hadn't submitted a notice, hadn't spoken to anyone about transitioning. Not even an internal shift had been discussed. My thumb hesitated over the link she attached, straight to the leadership page of Marlowe Metrics Group. The page loaded slowly, or maybe my nerves made it feel that way. My photo, once centered, flanked by my sisters and our COO, was gone. In its place, Evangeline's smiling face. New title, CEO. I blinked hard, scanned every tab. Refresh, reload, nothing. She was listed as the only executive, no transition statement, no thank you to the previous leadership. Not even a congrats post on my own internal dashboard. I tried calling the comms team. No answer. My father? Straight to voicemail. I sat down, carefully this time, as if sudden movement might break me apart. My breath caught when I opened LinkedIn. Pinned post from the MMG official page. A new chapter begins. Congratulations to Evangeline Marlowe, our new CEO and guiding light for the future. The video started autoplaying, muted. A sleek, edited highlight reel of Evangeline standing in front of a brushed steel backdrop, flanked by our mother, Astria, and a few board members. Confetti, a standing ovation. I recognized the room. It was the strategy boardroom, the one I had restructured myself. The caption burned into my vision. Evangeline has always been the true visionary behind our latest success. My stomach flipped. That latest success? The company's cross-platform rollout? I bled for that project. Pulled all-nighters, missed holidays, argued vendors into last-minute miracles. My team had worked weekends while Evangeline floated in and out of meetings with rehearsed lines and overpriced perfume. I wasn't invited. I wasn't even notified. My body felt hollow, like someone had scooped out all the bones and left the shell standing upright. I started calling, not texts, calls. My father didn't pick up. Again. I dialed Stephen, one of our founding board members, who once toasted me as the future of MMG. Voicemail. I tried Joan in HR, disconnected. Someone finally answered on the fifth try, our junior legal advisor, Kelly. "Oh, Vesper, I didn't expect, I'm not supposed to say anything," she stammered. "Say it anyway." There was silence. Then a soft click. She hung up. I stared at the phone in my hand. For a while, I just sat like that, watching the screen go black. You know what hurts more than betrayal? Silence. The kind of silence that screams confirmation. I told myself it was a mistake, that there was some internal miscommunication, that I was overreacting, so I drove. I needed to see for myself. When I pulled into the MMG parking garage, my badge didn't work. The red light blinked 3 times and buzzed angrily. I tried again, slower, same result. I waited by the elevator entrance until a delivery person swiped in, slipped past them quietly. Inside, everything looked the same. Sleek glass walls, minimal decor. It still smelled like expensive wood polish and productivity, but something in the air had changed. Heads turned, then quickly turned away. I approached the front desk. A new admin was there, a young woman I didn't recognize. "Hi," I began. "Can you check my office keycard? It seems—" She didn't even look up. Name? Vesper Rafferty. Clicking. Then a pause. Her eyes darted to my face. "I'm sorry, Ms. Rafferty. You've been removed from the employee access list." I blinked. "I'm sorry?" She leaned closer to the screen, whispered, like she was scared the monitor might report her. "There's a note. Status changed. HR has your exit documents." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. A wave of heat crawled up my neck. I stepped back, trying to process what just happened. People passed behind me. Colleagues I'd worked with for years. None stopped. One of them gave me a glance, maybe even a guilty flicker of recognition, but didn't say a word. I stood in that lobby like a stranger, like I'd never belonged there at all. I didn't know it then, but that locked glass door? It wasn't just the entrance I'd lost, it was the identity I'd built my whole life on. I stayed in my car longer than I should have. Parked just 2 blocks from MMG headquarters, I sat there watching people move in and out of the revolving glass doors like nothing had happened, like I hadn't spent a decade of my life shaping the very building they were stepping into. Eventually, I stepped out, locked my car, and approached the lobby. I didn't expect a red carpet, but I also didn't expect the security guard to square his shoulders the moment I stepped forward. "Ms. Rafferty?" he asked. His voice was firm, but not rude. I nodded. He looked at his tablet, then back at me. "You've been flagged as inactive. Can't let you upstairs." I didn't argue. What was the point? You don't need to be escorted out of a building to know you're no longer welcome. So I turned around, each step slower than the last, until I stood outside again with the sun bearing down like it had something to say. My next instinct was digital. I walked to a nearby cafe, ordered a black coffee I didn't really want, and opened my laptop. I logged into our internal dashboard, access denied, tried the project drive, no record of user ID. I typed my company email into Outlook, deactivated. My face remained blank, but my fingers curled tight under the table. They hadn't just fired me, they'd erased me. I opened a browser and checked our official social media accounts. There it was, a post pinned to the top, shimmering with curated language and a carefully filtered photo of Evangeline. Real leadership doesn't need to be loud, just present. There were over 2,000 likes and nearly 300 comments. One read, "Glad they're finally taking the company in a real direction." Another said, "Legacy needs fresh eyes, not recycled ambition." I closed the screen. I'd seen enough. It wasn't just anger, it was insult. I had trained half the people who were now praising my sister for innovation. Most of her so-called strategies were mine, rebranded, reworded, reissued with just enough polish to look new. By the time I left the cafe, the coastal breeze didn't feel refreshing. It felt like mockery. I drove straight to my downtown apartment, the one MMG provided as part of my executive package. I still held on to the belief that maybe, just maybe, this was all a giant miscommunication that someone would fix. But the door code didn't work. I tried again. Slower. Nothing. A buzz from behind startled me. "Ms. Rafferty?" I turned. A man in overalls, holding a clipboard and a small envelope. "I was told to wait for you. Maintenance." He handed me the envelope. Inside was a typed notice with company letterhead. "Your housing benefit has been reassigned pending role clarification. Please vacate within 24 hours. I laughed. Out loud, right there on the steps. "This isn't just a firing," I muttered. "This is exile." The man shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just the messenger, ma'am." I gave him a nod. He looked like he hated every second of this. I didn't go inside. I didn't fight. I turned back toward my car and pulled away from the curb with no clear destination. The condo wasn't mine. My title wasn't mine. Apparently, even my legacy wasn't mine. Still driving, I hit the speaker button on my steering wheel. "Call Evangeline," I said aloud. It rang twice before going to voicemail. Her voice, syrupy and composed, played back. "Hi, you've reached Evangeline. Leave a message or don't. It's totally fine either way." A click, then the tone. I didn't know what I was going to say until it spilled out. "It's not personal, huh? You always said that. It's just business, Vess. Even when you borrowed my slides and took credit for that launch. Even when you called me your shadow in front of Dad." I stopped, swallowed the rest. The message ended itself. Minutes later, a voicemail appeared in return. I played it over Bluetooth. "Hey, I know this is all overwhelming, but it's not personal, Vesper. Things move fast. You always said business came first." I let it play to the end. They stole my words to justify stealing my worth. Back at my car, I found a motel on the map with a check-in window still open and drove there. No security badges, no swipe codes, just a metal key on a plastic ring. I had one night to pack my life into boxes someone else now owned. And I hadn't even begun to figure out what they were taking next. I stopped counting birthdays when I turned 30. They'd always felt transactional in my family anyway. Quiet brunches with two bright smiles, cards signed in someone else's handwriting. That year, I didn't even remember it was my birthday until I noticed the date on my coffee receipt. March 10th. No candles, no texts, just a creaky Airbnb fridge humming louder than it should. The bed linen smelled like cheap detergent. A folding chair served as my desk. I hadn't unpacked most of my things because something inside me knew I wouldn't stay long. I wasn't sure if that was hope or delusion. I cracked the window for air, sat on the edge of the bed, and tried not to look at the unopened suitcase by the closet. It was strange how quickly everything could shift from "I belong here" to "I'm just passing through." I used to think exile was a historical concept, some Roman punishment. Turns out it's corporate policy now. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. A delivery man in a navy polo stood outside, holding an envelope. "For Vesper Rafferty?" "That's me," I said. He hesitated, then offered an awkward smile. Happy birthday?" He handed over the package and left before I could respond. The envelope was thick, heavy enough to feel like a book, light enough to feel like an insult. I knew. Before I even tore it open, I knew. Only my family could gift-wrap betrayal in legalese. Inside was a full civil filing, pages of carefully structured language accusing me of impersonating an executive, falsifying internal credentials, and, my personal favorite, misappropriation of strategic authority. Strategic authority. I laughed, a dry, humorless sound that didn't echo in the tiny space. They used my own words. I recognized entire paragraphs lifted from memos I'd written, twisted just enough to cast doubt. The phrases were weaponized now. Manipulated leadership perception, eroded stakeholder confidence, acted without explicit consent of governing board. It was like watching your own home being robbed, but the thieves used your blueprints. I read every line. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I highlighted. There was a section about intellectual property, claiming I had misused presentation templates, analytics models, and vendor relationships to create an illusion of operational control. What illusion? I built those models when Evangeline couldn't explain the quarterly reports. The kicker was the line about malicious influence. According to their version, I hadn't just lied. I'd manipulated everyone around me to believe I was leading. Right? Because leadership must be a trick if it doesn't come from a boardroom announcement. My phone buzzed. It was late. I hesitated, then tapped the screen. "Orion," I said. "Ves, now's not a good time," he replied, his voice low and clipped. I didn't call to fight. A pause. Click. That was it. "No, I'm sorry. No, how are you holding up? Just disconnection." It was fitting. Turns out betrayal doesn't always shout. Sometimes it just vanishes. I stared at the phone for a while. Not sad, not angry, just quiet. It was a different kind of silence this time, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. I turned back to the lawsuit, scanned the headers again. This time I wasn't reading. I was preparing. There were names in those paragraphs, directors, advisors, third-party vendors, all listed as witnesses or collaborators. Some of them owed me calls, others owed me explanations. I laid the pages out on the comforter, smoothed the creases, and grabbed a pen. If they wanted a courtroom, they were going to get a damn spotlight. It was a Monday morning, 2 days after I finished marking up every page of the lawsuit they threw at me. I hadn't left the Airbnb since Friday night. The air had a bitter stillness, like the quiet just before a thunderstorm rips through a hot street. I needed to get out, just for air, just for milk, something normal. The grocery store was half full, mostly retirees and moms. I was standing in the self-checkout line, scrolling through my phone, when I felt my stomach turn. There it was, my face, on a tabloid app, wedged between headlines about celebrity divorces and the mayor's affair scandal. Heiress or hoax, Marlowe Metrics family drama exposed. I didn't click. I didn't have to. The sub-headline already told me everything. Inside the private fallout of Newport Beach's most media-shy executive and the sister who took her place. I hadn't given a single interview. But there it was, Quotes from close sources, a photoshopped headshot of me looking cold and calculating, and an entire section titled, "The Silent CEO." It's strange how words can slice cleaner than blades, especially when they spell your name wrong on purpose. As I walked out with a carton of eggs and an overpriced energy bar, I texted my mother. "You dragged me through court. Now the world?" No reply. I called Evangeline. Voicemail. Again. I didn't expect apologies. I didn't even expect decency. But I thought maybe there'd be a thread of humanity left. Turns out, I was the only one who thought family meant anything when it came to reputation. They want me silent. They forgot who they raised. That afternoon, a knock at the door startled me. A woman in a sharp navy suit handed over a folder and left without a word. The seal on the letterhead was unmistakable. Marlowe Metrics, Legal Division. "Dear Ms. Rafferty," the letter began, "you are hereby requested to appear for a pre-trial deposition related to the ongoing civil dispute." The lines that followed were harsher than even the lawsuit had been. They didn't just dispute my claims. They rewrote history. "Please be advised," it read, "you are not recognized as an official executive within Marlowe Metrics Group, nor were you ever granted contractual leadership privileges." I ran those meetings. I built those decks. I bled in those contracts. And now I was being written out like a typo. The worst part? They were smart about it. They didn't scream me out of the company. They whispered me out, paper by paper, line by line. I stared at the document until the ink blurred, then grabbed my phone and scrolled to a name I hadn't touched in a while. Robert Landry, former board member. A man who once told me, if the company had any guts, they'd give you the damn gavel. He answered after 2 rings. "Robert," I said. "Vesper," his voice was tight. I heard. "I'm not calling for sympathy. I need clarity." He sighed. "You're not going to like what I have to say. Try me. There are whispers about escalation, that if you keep pushing this, certain people will make sure you're not touchable in any other firm. Think long-term. Don't burn every bridge." I felt something cold settle into my chest. "They burned the bridge," I said. "I'm just lighting the rubble." Silence. "I always respected you," he said quietly. "But this is going to be ugly." "It already is." I ended the call. "I used to sign those contracts. Now they'll have to sign a statement proving I didn't exist." Tuesday morning hit with a sharpness I hadn't expected. Maybe it was the cold tile under my feet or the leftover bitterness in the coffee I tried to microwave back to life. Either way, it wasn't subtle. I needed to pull my bank records for court prep. Something simple, something mine. I opened my laptop, typed in my MMG login, and waited. Invalid credentials. I blinked. Tried again. Account not found. Confused but calm, I called the internal financial services line listed on the old onboarding packet I still had saved in PDFs. A woman answered after 2 rings. "Marlowe Metrics Finance, this is Helen." "Hi, Helen. This is Vesper Rafferty. I'm trying to access my executive investment account and my consulting bonus records." A pause. "Could you repeat the last name?" "Rafferty, Vesper, former chief strategy." "Oh, right. Just a moment, ma'am." She was gone for less than 30 seconds, but it felt longer. "Ms. Rafferty, I'm sorry, but we have no record of you being an account owner on file." I didn't respond immediately. She continued, "If you'd like to submit a records request, there's a new protocol through our external counsel." They didn't just erase my login, I said aloud, but mostly to myself. They erased my contribution. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done in years. I unpacked boxes that had followed me through 3 apartments, still sealed from my last real move. Inside were printouts, memos, and hand-scribbled whiteboard snapshots from the early years of MMG's transformation. Some still had coffee stains from late nights. My name was everywhere. Timelines, budget sign-offs, brainstorm drafts with notes in my handwriting. Not Evangeline's, not our mother's. Mine. They always underestimated how much I keep in hard copy. I guess being old school is finally an asset. I organized the documents across the dining table of my rented unit like puzzle pieces. Labels, color codes, dates. I wasn't just reacting, I was building. By dusk, I was on a call with Genevieve Chan, an old contact from a media compliance firm I'd once hired during a client's acquisition case. We weren't close. We didn't need to be. "I'm not asking you to represent me," I told her. "I need someone who can read between lines and sharpen them." Genevieve laughed once. "That I can do." We spent the next hour dissecting the lawsuit. She highlighted red flags, suggested phrasing for my upcoming statement, and told me what to prepare for in deposition. "You're not suing back yet," she said near the end. "You're setting a record straight." "No spin," I replied. "Just truth, sharpened like glass." Later that night, I got an email from an anonymous tipster, an internal document they'd slipped into a secured upload. Subject line, "Your transition memo." I opened the PDF. It was official. A memo to the board, dated 2 months before I was removed. The document laid out the succession plan, detailing my phase-out. At the bottom, under Authorized by, Astria Marlowe. She signed me out like a visitor. A guest. A mistake. I stared at that name, not because it surprised me, but because it didn't. I thought there might be a trace of guilt, but the signature was confident. Loopy, clean, like she was proud of what she'd done. No more wondering, no more hoping it was a misunderstanding. Around midnight, I set up a tripod in the corner of the room, angled the old lamp toward the white wall behind me, and hit record. I didn't write a script. I didn't need one. "I'm not fighting to belong anymore," I said, voice steady. "I'm fighting so they never do this to anyone else again." I clicked save on the video, uploaded a copy to 3 cloud drives, and looked at the clock. My war didn't need a public rally. It just needed one private, irrevocable decision. Thursday evening came with an odd calm. It wasn't the quiet of peace. It was the kind of silence that only follows an earthquake. The air had a weight to it, like something was still settling under the rubble. I had just finished organizing the folders from the lawsuit, taping post-its to evidence piles, when a knock came at the door. I expected a delivery, maybe more papers. What I got instead was an envelope, thick, hand-delivered, with a private security watermark. The return address was from someone I hadn't spoken to in 3 years, Callista Rowe. I opened it slowly, the paper warm from the courier's hand. "You didn't have to scream to be heard," the letter began. "I saw what you built. Let me know how I can help." It wasn't dramatic. No promises, no guarantees, but coming from one of MMG's original capital partners, it was a shift in the wind. When silence breaks in your favor, it echoes louder than applause. I laid the letter next to my laptop and stood for a moment. The kitchen clock ticked. Outside, car lights swept across the wall. I pulled open the cabinet under the counter and retrieved 3 more boxes I hadn't touched yet, folders from the company's early years. My name was scribbled across most of them. As the hours passed, I turned my living room into a war room. Diagrams on one wall, timelines on another, photos of team meetings, screenshots of contract milestones, copies of strategy reports with edits in my handwriting. This wasn't just memory. It was my defense. That same night, a statement hit the web. "If Vesper Rafferty is not returned to the table, I am pulling out," it read. It was posted by Alton Briggs, a mid-tier investor with influence far beyond his stake. The man rarely spoke publicly, but when he did, others listened. The last line burned its way through me. Brands built on family loyalty shouldn't be burning their own legacy. I wasn't asking for a knight, but I'll take a shield. A notification popped up on my phone. 5 new articles, all speculating about Alton's statement. Headlines ranged from "Investor Revolt at MMG" to "The Rafferty Rumble." Most missed the point, but the conversation had shifted. Later, I sat in front of the mirror, reading aloud from a note I'd drafted but never posted. A personal manifesto I wasn't sure anyone needed to hear, but I needed to say, "They made me the villain in their story," I said to my reflection. "I'm rewriting mine." I folded the note and slid it behind a photo of my team, back when we were still a team. The night wore on. The kitchen was dim now, lit only by the glow of my laptop. Just when I thought I could rest, another voicemail rolled in. It was from Robert Landry again, the same board member who'd warned me last week. Be smart, Vesper. Don't blow up what can still be buried. You don't want this in court. Neither do they. I stared at the speaker, listened twice, then saved the message. Burial is what they wanted. I prefer resurrection. I closed the laptop, looked at the wall, and finally wrote a title across the folder I had built all week. Counterattack. I was halfway through sorting affidavits when the knock came. Not urgent, not hesitant, just loud enough to be official. I opened the door, expecting a delivery or another envelope from my lawyer. What I got instead was a man in a crisp blazer with a badge clipped to his lapel and a yellow envelope tucked under his arm. Miss Rafferty? Yes. You've been served. He handed me the envelope and turned without a word. Inside, an official subpoena. Emergency arbitration hearing, requested by Marlowe Metrics. Date, Thursday. Venue, conference chamber of the same law firm I once recommended to our board. I flipped to the back page. Legal representation, Zinnia Hawthorne. I didn't laugh, but I smiled, bitterly. Zinnia and I went to college together. We debated in the same political science circles. She always lost, not graciously. Long time, Vesper, she would say at the hearing. Funny how our paths always cross professionally. You always hated losing back then. Guess we're back in the ring. That night, I logged onto LinkedIn and saw it. MMG's official page had posted a new announcement. Transitioning back to trusted leadership, legacy should never be mistaken for entitlement. A neat little sentence, just vague enough to pass internal review. But I knew the code, and so did everyone else. The comments rolled in like clockwork. Glad to see the company taking real direction. Nepotism doesn't mean competence. Finally, clarity. They rewrote the story so fast, I'm no longer a footnote, I'm fiction. The next morning, my inbox pinged with a confidential document. No sender, no traceable metadata. But I recognized the format. It was a leaked internal memo from MMG's PR and Litigation Committee. Page 1 was a timeline of press releases and arbitration talking points. Page 2 detailed targeted phrases to use. Unstable, emotionally unfit. Had always exaggerated her role. Then there was the transcript. We don't need to win outright, someone had said during the strategy call. We just need to exhaust her. Good luck exhausting a woman who's run entire quarters with 1 hour of sleep. I didn't hesitate. That afternoon, I posted my first public rebuttal. It wasn't a speech, no dramatics, no shaky phone footage, just a clean graphic slide listing 8 key projects with timestamps, client signatures, and links to archived internal documents. Underneath, one sentence. Legacy isn't given, it's documented. By evening, the post had over 40,000 views. My inbox filled with ex-employees and even competitors who wrote things like, I always knew it wasn't her sister, and we were told not to talk about you. Not long after, I received an anonymous message. Email, burner address, single sentence. Stop before you burn your future. I stared at it. They think threats scare me. They forget. I've walked through storms they only read about. I pressed upload on my evidence folder. And as I did, I whispered to no one in particular. Let them try. I'm not playing their game. I'm rewriting the rules. I stepped out of the elevator into the MMG lobby just before 11 a.m. The carpet still smelled like money, new, expensive, just replaced for this hearing. The press was already gathering near the revolving doors, murmuring behind half smiles. I ignored them. The receptionist barely made eye contact as she pointed me toward conference room B. Opposing counsel already checked in, she said. I nodded once, tight-lipped. The same hallway I used to breeze down now felt like enemy ground. They built these walls. They thought I'd crumble inside them. I kept walking. The room was smaller than I expected, but freezing cold, typical legal intimidation tactic. I took my seat across from the Marlowe side. Zinnia, of course, seated like she owned the oxygen in the room. Next to her, Astria sat perfectly still, her posture more sculpted than her last round of Botox. Evangeline leaned slightly back, arms crossed, that familiar smugness coiled like perfume around her throat. I said nothing. They didn't need me to speak yet. Their silence said enough, clipped glances, micro smirks, and side whispers like teenagers at a funeral. During the first recess, I stepped out to breathe. My heels echoed across the marble floor as I wandered toward the back hallway near the legacy wall, a space I helped design. Then I saw it. The founder list, engraved names on brass plaques. Mine was gone, not scratched out, not marked inactive. Gone, like I never belonged there. I stood there longer than I should have. I didn't expect an apology, but I never expected erasure. The break ended. I returned to the table without a word. They looked at me, but I didn't flinch. Even lions don't eat their own unless they're threatened. The arbitration resumed. More statements, more documents read aloud. Zinnia flipped through a slideshow labeled Company Restructure Timeline. I saw one of my original slides. Just enough of the format remained to sting. This was drafted by Evangeline, she said, clicking forward. No, I said, too quickly. Zinnia paused, raised an eyebrow. That's mine, I added, slower. Slide 3, 5, 7, and 11. Those were all mine. Font choices, file path naming, margin spacing. You think I don't remember what I bled for? Zinnia looked to the judge. Ms. Rafferty, we ask that you— Let's go slide by slide, I said, standing. I'll bring the originals. A hush settled. My lawyer placed a folder in front of me, opened it carefully, page by page. Receipts, signatures, timestamps, draft logs, a roadmap of every late night they'd tried to overwrite. Across the room, Astria blinked once, slowly. Evangeline's smirk finally cracked. I turned to the panel. I request that these be added to the official record. The clerk nodded. Noted. I stood, not waiting for permission, and asked to submit an independent file. I didn't raise my voice, but I made damn sure they'd hear me. The morning after the hearing, I didn't wake up so much as I surfaced. My body felt like it had been scraped out and stuffed with static. The blinds were drawn halfway. Outside, the hum of traffic was soft, indifferent. I hadn't slept deeply, not with everything echoing in my chest. But my phone had 62 messages. I scrolled without reading most of them. Some were short. Stay strong. Others were long, convoluted monologues from people I hadn't heard from in years. Supporters, skeptics, strangers who thought my downfall made for a great breakfast debate. They didn't just question my title. They questioned my existence. I closed the messages, opened my email. Then I saw one that stopped me. Malis Bjorn. I hadn't heard from her since she left the company, quietly, without ceremony, after a merger we both knew had been forced. She had been my assistant for almost 3 years. She was smart, organized, empathetic. The kind of person who remembered how you took your coffee without asking twice. She'd sent a voice note. Just that, no text, no context. I sat up and played it. Vesper, I wasn't sure if I should send this, but after watching what they've done, I couldn't stay quiet. You were the one in the trenches. You ran the calls. You cleaned up their messes. You did the work they bragged about. I watched them chip at you until there was nothing left to take credit for, and still they found a way to call it theirs. They know it, even if they pretend not to. Silence. Then a sigh. I'm sorry I left when I did. I didn't know how to stay. I sat there, phone still in hand. Truth always arrives late, but it's never quiet. A little later, while pouring stale coffee into a chipped mug, another message came in, this time from someone I barely remembered, a kid from the analytics team. Sam, maybe 24 now. You probably don't remember me, his message read. But you changed my life. You pushed for me to lead that campaign pitch, even when everyone said I was too green. I still use the checklist you made for me. You taught me more in 6 months than school did in 4 years. I reread it 3 times. Maybe I didn't lose everything. Maybe I planted something. By late afternoon, I needed to breathe different air. I threw on an old hoodie, grabbed my keys, and walked. I didn't plan to go anywhere in particular, but my feet led me back to MMG. The building sat tall and smug, the glass exterior still reflecting the same sunset it did the night we launched our IPO. I crossed the street and stood across from the wall, the one we called the legacy panel. We used to feature campaign posters, client wins, seasonal greetings. Now it was bare. Except for one thing. Spray paint, big, bold letters, scrawled across the lower brick. Give her back what's hers. I didn't know who had done it. I didn't care. It was crude, loud, misspelled in one corner. But it was real. It was something. It wasn't about being seen again. It was about never being truly invisible. That night, after I'd showered and lit the only lavender candle left in my things, I sat at my desk with a yellow legal pad. I didn't open my laptop. I didn't check comments. I wrote a letter. Not to anyone I'd send it to, but to the girl I used to be. Dear Vesper, I began. You don't owe them silence. You owe yourself memory. They will forget you to protect themselves. You must remember to protect your voice. They mistook your stillness for surrender. Let that be their first mistake. You survived the fire. Now build with the ashes. I sealed it and tucked it into the drawer beneath my old portfolio binder. As I sealed the letter and placed it inside my desk drawer, I realized this wasn't the end. It was the echo that would call in the reckoning. I woke up to the sound of my name, not someone calling it, but hearing it echo across a dozen notifications. The private video I'd recorded, the one I never shared, was now public and viral. It had been leaked. Overnight, it spread from one anonymous account to tens of thousands of shares. I didn't need 1 million views, but maybe the truth did. The video showed me not polished, not angry, just honest. I was seated in a hoodie, minimal makeup, no prepared speech. I talked about decisions, strategy, how we built MMG from a garage file server, and 6 half-used whiteboards. I didn't accuse anyone. I simply laid out what happened: dates, actions, choices. I named the projects I led, the clients I saved, the calls I ran when no one else stepped up. And for the first time, people listened. By noon, MMG's comment sections were disabled. A board memo leaked just hours later read, "All messaging concerning Mrs. Rafferty must be internally reviewed and externally paused." They didn't pause to protect me. They paused to protect themselves. The hashtag started next. Vesper was the vision. Truth over title. Bring her back. And then came the stories. Women from other firms shared moments they were sidelined, rewritten, erased. Men in the industry came forward too. Some I'd trained, some I'd competed with, sharing quotes, screenshots, memories. My old mentor from Stanford's executive program posted, "Vesper taught me more about innovation under pressure than any man I've worked with. Full stop." Then something else happened. My cousin Nora, who worked quietly in a PR firm out in Denver, made a post that changed everything. "I know this will cost me family, but silence costs more. We don't cut off women for speaking, or we shouldn't." She was cut out of the family trust that same day. She texted me only once after, "I'm good. Don't worry about me." Worry about finishing what you started. They called her dramatic. I called her brave. The final blow came on a Tuesday morning when someone released a Zoom recording. I recognized it instantly. It was a strategic planning session I led 6 months before they ousted me. I was at the head of the table, running timelines, assigning deliverables. Evangeline barely spoke. She was late to the call. The video played across platforms, no filters, no edits. One commenter wrote, "If she's not the CEO, then I've never seen a CEO." Turns out, truth wears better than any title. I didn't smile when I saw it. I just stared. For once, I didn't feel like I had to defend myself. The proof was louder than anything I could say. A day later, a minor shareholder, one of the early angel investors who'd been silent for months, released a statement. "We were misled. Ms. Rafferty was not only capable, she was foundational." I retract my prior endorsements and urge the board to amend the record. Others followed: a former board member, a supplier from our Seattle division, an ex-partner who had once ghosted my calls. It was like the tide finally admitted it had been wrong all along. I wanted to feel triumphant. I didn't. I felt steady. And that was enough. Retract all you want. You already printed the lie. The next morning, a black car with tinted windows pulled up outside my loft. I saw it from the window. No press, no noise. Just one woman in a dark suit who stepped out slowly, holding a portfolio tucked under her arm. She wasn't from the media. She was from the courtroom. Tuesday afternoon arrived with the weight of something final. I was nursing a lukewarm cup of black tea when a knock came. Not firm like a process server, not hesitant like a neighbor. It was something in between, official but respectful. I opened the door to a man in a navy blazer with a small seal pin on his lapel. He held a plain folder. "Ms. Rafferty," he said, handing it to me. "This is a notice from the U.S. District Court. A federal review has been authorized. There's a motion to suspend the MMG Board's authority, effective immediately, pending investigation." He didn't linger, just nodded once and left. I stood there with the folder still in hand, breath held like I was waiting for someone to stop me. This doesn't mean it's over, but it means you're not the only one who saw something wrong. I'd forgotten what it felt like to hear justice from a stranger. Later that afternoon, after the emails slowed and the adrenaline gave way to exhaustion, I noticed a voicemail I hadn't checked. It was from a number I knew too well. My father. I hesitated, then hit play. I didn't stop it. That was all he said. His voice carried no anger, no tremble, just a quiet weight I couldn't ignore. "You were right to leave. Even when they admit it, they still don't say sorry." I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I just sat there, trying to decide if silence wrapped in guilt was better or worse than silence wrapped in denial. That evening, I stood on a small stage in a local conference room, one of those rented hotel ballrooms with too much carpeting and too many ceiling tiles. It was a Women in Tech forum, and I had been invited weeks ago. I'd almost canceled. But something in me knew I needed to show up. I didn't talk about lawsuits or names. I talked about voice, about being erased and reclaiming space, not just in boardrooms, but in history. "You can burn the title off my name," I said, "but you can't burn every woman who watched you do it and learned." They stood for that, not everyone, but enough. I left before the mingling began. On the drive back, my phone buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. A short text. "If you ever return, the room's still yours." No apology, just that. They needed a storm. You were the lightning. Maybe forgiveness doesn't always mean return. I didn't reply. That night, I stayed up drafting something new, something mine, the paperwork for my own advisory firm. Small, lean, completely self-owned. A place where ideas didn't need pedigree to matter. A space where no one could overwrite my name. They took the past. I'm building what they can't touch. The future. As I pressed submit on my business registration, I didn't feel fire. I felt soil. Something new could grow here. The courthouse buzzed like a hive when I arrived. Reporters lined the front steps, murmuring, their cameras clicking in half rhythm. Military police officers flanked both entrances, their faces unreadable under their caps. I didn't look at them. I didn't look at the gallery either. I looked straight ahead and walked with the weight of every silent year that led to this. Inside, the room was colder than it needed to be. The air conditioner fought against the weight of expectation, but it couldn't mask the heat building in my chest. This wasn't just a courtroom anymore. It was the final scene of a heist. And I wasn't the thief. I stepped to the table and placed the folder in front of me. My lawyer nodded once. I met the judge's eyes. "Your Honor," I said, "I respectfully request to submit this file as additional evidence for the record." He raised an eyebrow. "Proceed." I opened the folder. Contracts with my signature. Client communications. Email logs. Screenshots. Financial reports showing the movement of funds, ones that had once been tied to my name but reassigned to others after I was removed. Then the back door opened. Celine Ashford walked in like she wasn't just expected, but necessary. She was wearing gray, neutral, clean, unshakable. "Your Honor," she said without pause, "I witnessed firsthand Miss Rafferty's leadership. This court deserves the full truth." The judge gestured to the bailiff. "Close the doors. No one leaves." A murmur swept the room. One of the board members on MMG's side shifted in his seat. Astria looked at her nails. Evangeline crossed her arms and stared at the wall. The judge tapped his pen once. The next slide played. It was audio. Grainy, but clear enough. From one of their internal strategy calls. "She won't fight us," a male voice said. "She never does." Another voice, Evangeline's, unmistakably amused. "She's too careful. She'll roll over like always. Let the press finish her." I didn't smile. "Guess again." The judge didn't speak for a long time after it ended. He leaned back, hands folded, and stared at the counsel table across from me like he was measuring the weight of silence. Before he could open his mouth, someone from MMG's side stood. A new representative, not someone I recognized, probably damage control in a tailored suit. "Your Honor," he said, voice sharp, "in light of today's developments, the board has issued a formal statement, effective immediately. Full settlement terms have been filed. Astria Marlowe and Evangeline Marlowe have resigned. Mrs. Rafferty's leadership record has been confirmed. We deeply regret our prior actions." No courtroom applause, no gavel-slamming dramatics, just a line drawn in public. They gave back what they stole, but they couldn't touch what I rebuilt. When the hearing ended, I didn't linger. Reporters shouted my name as I stepped outside, flashes chasing my steps. I said nothing. I didn't need to. My new office space wasn't big, just a converted co-op in the arts district with exposed brick and windows that rattled in the wind. But it was mine, my firm, my team. I took the stairs 2 at a time. The moment I reached my desk, I pulled off my coat, slid into the chair, and looked out at the street I used to walk in anonymity. I wasn't the victim. I was the verdict. As the door shut behind me, the air smelled of paper and sunlight. And I realized, for once, I didn't owe a single soul an explanation.